Welcome to the Note to Self podcast. I'm your host, Zoe. I'm a certified professional life coach, serial entrepreneur, verified YouTuber, and published author. On this podcast, you can expect actionable tips, reflections, and inspiration to live your best, most fulfilling life. So, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Note to Self. In today's Note to Self, I've got another pattern alert for you here today. And this is a pattern that I've actually noticed in a lot of entrepreneurs. And this existed in myself for a very long time. And in understanding what this pattern was, I gained the power, the empowerment to transform it. So that is my intention for you today, that if this episode resonates with you, it's going to provide you with the next step, the next activation, the next awareness, aha moment that can then empower you to shift this, because it's a very uncomfortable to be in. And that pattern that I'm speaking to today is feast or famine in finances. Feast or famine in finances. So what do I mean by that? And like I said, I recognize this in a lot of entrepreneurs, especially those who are newer to the entrepreneurial journey or have just made that leap. It can sort of feel like you might come into a bout of money and then that money quickly goes away and you're back where you were before. And then a bunch of money comes in. And again, this sort of feast or famine energy. And I do actually, I'm going to be like slightly esoteric for a minute, but I do actually believe that that type of patterning is ancestral. I do believe that it's related to where ancestors came from or where they lived or how they experienced life in different ways. And I believe it shows up for us in finances in order for us to clear it. Money shows us so many powerful lessons. And when we stop being afraid of money and we stop resisting money, that's when we can start to transform the lessons, when we decide that it's important for us to heal our relationship with money. And at the end of this month of July, I'm hosting a 2-day masterclass, which is called Abundance Embodied. And we're going to be looking at this. We're going to be looking at our relationship with money. And we're going to begin clearing that, cleaning that channel up so we become attractive and magnetic to financial abundance. Because it is important for us to have a healthy relationship with money, because then we attract more money, we create safety and stability for ourselves in money, and then it's all the more easy for us to answer to our divine desires. Because if you guys haven't noticed, like, money is very important for us in getting what we want, right? Money is the way in which we exchange form of energy to receive and to give ourselves and grant ourselves things, to take care of our bodies, to hire coaches, to enter into programs, to do what feels good to us. So it's important. I'd love to invite you to that masterclass. It's going to be extremely expansive and awakening. And it will also help to uncover and release more of this pattern if it is something that you're experiencing, this feast or famine in finances. So receiving a lot of money and then feeling like it's all gone. Or almost like you open the floodgates, money comes in, and then all of a sudden it's gone again. And then you fear, well, when you get into a scarcity mindset, perhaps like, when will it come back? When will it come back? And then you feel the feast and you get excited and you're like, this is it. I feel amazing about money now. And then it dissolves. So what is that about? Like I said, I think it's related to ancestral patterns and perhaps even like food back in the day for our ancestors, or perhaps in childhood, right? Like where does feast or famine exist in your life, and what could it be trying to show you? So like I said, I feel like this shows up in a lot of entrepreneurs in the beginning of their journey, because they might be able to manifest money when they focus, but there seems to be this challenge in maintaining that level of security and stability. So I noticed this pattern in myself for many years. I felt like, 1 month I might get a couple YouTube sponsors and feeling really good about finances. And the next month there might be one or no sponsors. Or I might launch a program and a large sum of money comes in. And then, I don't launch that program for a while again. And when I decided to really bring awareness to this pattern, I realized that there's a lot of stories that were attached to this pattern. So yes, there's always stories around money that are meant for us to sift through. But when we start to acknowledge the patterns that are deeper than that, that's when we get to the real good stuff. Because when we begin to shift and uproot the patterns, that's when we create a lot of space. So I realized that from this feast or famine pattern, I had a lot of stories being told about the way that money comes in as an entrepreneur. It was like oh, it's actually what I was telling myself, the lies that I was telling myself. Remember, truth is light, lies are heavy. The lies that I was telling myself is that as an entrepreneur, income is unpredictable. As an entrepreneur, a lot of money can come in at once, but then it's not going to come in for a while. Or as an entrepreneur, money fluctuates. I was like, why is that? There are tons of entrepreneurs out there who are creating stability with income and who are, let's say, creating stability in the sense that they are aware of how much money is coming in the next month. And it doesn't matter what they're doing, but they believe. They believe that they have a certain energetic minimum in relation to finances. So the minimal amount of money that they believe that they can make, and also a maximum that they can make. Because what's interesting is that when I really looked at this pattern for myself, I had a minimum amount of money per month that I was available for, an energetic minimum. Like an energetic minimum is something that like you can't imagine making less than. And for a long period of time, that amount was about $5,000. I couldn't imagine making less than $5,000 a month. And I couldn't imagine making more than $30,000 a month because that was the maximum that I made at that point in time. So I really got clear on what those energetic minimums and maximums were. And I started to really look at that. Again, I started to dissect this pattern and what are the stories around the pattern. And I noticed that the more stories that I transformed around this pattern, it allowed the pattern to release from my life. It allowed the pattern to, let's say its roots were chopped out and it started to uproot itself and get tossed out. And other stories, I'm just going to start listing off some of the stories that were there around this pattern for me in hopes that it will start to click and activate a few things within you. So other stories around that were that other people know how to create stability and security in finances, but I don't. Or it is hard for me to figure out how to create sustainable income as an entrepreneur. Or it's always going to feel like a roller coaster with finances. Or I'm never going to be able to figure out money in this way. So any of those stories that I just shared with you, if any of them are clicking or resonating with you, I encourage you to take a moment to write it down, look at it, ask yourself, where did this come from? Where did this come from? And ask yourself, is it true? Remember, truth is light, lies are heavy. How does it feel in your body when you think that it's always going to be a roller coaster with money? Oh my gosh, that feels chaotic. That feels heavy to me. That feels contracting. It feels like, oh my gosh, it feels like, no, that doesn't sound like a fun life. And I know what I came here. I signed up for fun, abundance, expansion. I signed up for an extraordinary life. That does not fit. That does not suit. It's got to go. And just deciding it gets to go. Decide that it gets to go now. Decide that if it doesn't feel good in your being, it feels like a lie, it gets to go. It gets to be tossed out. Give yourself permission to feel that empowered. Give yourself permission to feel that powerful, that you have a say over this. I hope this episode sparked something within you guys. I hope that it began to uproot this pattern for you, because when we bring awareness to patterns, awareness is always 90% of the transformation. If you've got the pattern, if you got it clear in your sight, and you decide to do a bit more of the energetic, emotional work, let's say journaling through it or thinking through it and getting curious, being the gentle observer of it, you can start to uproot it. Awareness is 90% of the transformation. You're almost there. The hard part is when we're not aware, remember, because when we're not aware, we're struggling around in there. We're feeling anxiety. We're feeling all sorts of crazy, fucked up things around money and that don't feel good. We don't need to do that to ourselves anymore. We just don't. And with that, I'd love to drop another note in that I'd love to see you inside the masterclass at the end of this month, because we are going to be diving right into all the money stories and healing and transforming that. The link will be in the show notes. I love you guys so much. Wherever you are is absolutely perfect. And I'll be talking to you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to Note to Self. If you enjoyed this episode, please help me out by rating and reviewing this show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If my energy is resonating with you and you feel the call to work with me, there are an abundance of ways to do so. I offer one-to-one life coaching programs, mastermind containers, and DIY courses, all of which are available through my website, zoearielpoulsen.com. Until next time, take note of all the abundance that surrounds you as you make the most of this game called life.